and we are going to have join us Drago Bratic, who is the owner of Oak City Technologies and Purple Comma. And those are interesting businesses to be involved in the future of SEO. I think that Purple Comma with the podcasting and YouTube video creation, combined with the website work and SEO work with Oak City Technologies, is an interesting little intersection. And so without further ado, let me have Drago take over. I'm going to hide myself from the stage and he'll be up in just a moment.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Raleigh SEO Meetup. I'm Drago Bratic with Oak City Tech, and I'll be your presenter this evening. We're going to talk about the past, present, and future of SEO looking out into 2022 and beyond. Let me just switch over to my slideshow presentation, and we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to the Raleigh SEO Meetup. My name is Drago Bratic, and I'll be your presenter this evening. These first few slides are just a little bit about me and my company, so we'll go ahead and skip over those for now. I'll make sure Frank has a link to the presentation so he can send it out to all of you. So let's get started with what happened in 2021. Should it matter to you? And did SEO die again? Let's get started with Core Web Vitals. This was something that honestly did not even pop up on my radar. Page loading speed, interactivity, and visual stability should have been on your checklist since 2015. For those of you not aware, let me go into a little bit of detail. Loading performance is measured by largest contentful paint, essentially how quickly the biggest item on the page loads entirely. Interactivity is measured by first input delay, basically the first signs of life from your website, ideally below 100 milliseconds. Visual stability is measured by cumulative layout shift, the elements shifting around on your website from side to side, up and down. More on that on the next slide, actually. In general, Core Web Vitals were added to other factors such as mobile friendliness and safety of browsing under the umbrella of page experience ranking factors. A little bit more about cumulative layout shift. While I don't think it's a big deal because I've been paying attention for a while, I've noticed that other webmasters and SEO folks still haven't caught on to the train, for lack of a better term. So I wanted to have a slide specifically mentioning cumulative layout shift. Personally, I thought it was only a matter of time before it became a ranking factor, and it was incorporated into the Core Web Vitals in mid-2021. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a visitor. It's quite annoying from their perspective to see something on the website shift unexpectedly, let alone disappear. It could also cause some serious errors for businesses where a customer needs to make a decision but can't click on the wrong button due to shifting elements. In short, you don't want your website shifting around and moving while it's rendering. The Google Business Profile was a little bit more of a I guess an important update in my eyes. It wasn't just a rename. The importance of local maps and your business profile has only increased throughout the past year. We saw a deeper integration between maps and local business profiles across the board. Besides the name change itself, Google says it's now easier to claim and verify your profile. Furthermore, as of late 2021, businesses have the option to reply to messages directly from the Google Maps mobile app in the Updates tab. Images was another area where I felt 2021 brought some great clarification. In February 2021, Google provided documentation on image SEO best practices. While the advice was focused primarily on ranking well in Google Images, I feel that marketers can apply many of the suggestions to image ranking in general. Duplicate content. This is something that's been talked about pretty much since the beginning of SEO. I feel like it's been basically beaten to a dead horse, or whatever the phrase is. It's just something that, keeps coming up year after year. But finally, last year, we got some clarification from John Mueller himself. I linked the actual video where the Google Office Hours, or whatever that program is called, where the question was asked and John Mueller directly responded to. I linked that video down there. You can see at the bottom of the screen. He clarified to say that if they find the same information on multiple pages and someone searches for specifically for that piece of information, then they're just going to try to find the best matching page. That's it. They're not really going to mark anyone down or up or anything. They're just going to try and find the best page based on the query. This is especially true for generic product descriptions for e-commerce, because product descriptions can be very generic, and so they're shared across many websites. That's enough about the past. Let's kind of talk about the present. And Frank reminded me that there's always new folks coming into SEO. And so what's the basics, or what's essentially established for him and I, isn't necessarily true for the newcomer. So I wanted to take a few minutes and just briefly go over the basics of SEO. What should we focus on? The number one thing I can say is to optimize your website for a mobile experience. Compress images and give them a descriptive name and alt text, but don't use CSS because Google says they don't read that stuff. They just don't. Cut down on extra code and plugins so your website loads in less than 3 seconds. Ideally, I like to shoot for 2 seconds. Practice internal linking, breadcrumbs, and have a sitemap so all your pages can be found and indexed. You just want to give Google as many opportunities as it possibly can have to find every single piece of content or page on your website entirety. It's also important to install an SSL certificate. Sometimes I still see websites that don't have those, which is amazing in 2022, but make sure you install an SSL certificate. Make your URL short and descriptive. In my opinion, if someone can remember your URL, it's probably a good descriptor and it's probably going to rank well. Practice good website architecture and navigation. Again, this kind of falls back to the sitemap and helping Google index your various pages, but you also want to have a good architecture and navigation structure for your users so they're able to navigate around and find things you want them to find. And finally, in terms of optimizing the website for mobile experience, use descriptive title tags and meta descriptions. You should still absolutely do these, even though Google writes them at their discretion. The point, again, is to give Google everything it possibly needs to classify your website. Google knows no one will visit a slow/sloppy website, so you're essentially taken out of the running if your website isn't up to a base set of usability standards. After you have your website up to these base set of usability standards, we're going to want to do keyword research so we understand what terms our customers are searching for, how much traffic those terms can send our way, and how difficult it might be to rank for them. I mean, how do you expect to get traffic if you don't know what your target demographic is searching for? This isn't field of dreams, build it and they will come type situation. You got to put in the work and find what folks are looking for pertaining to your specific industry. Content marketing. This is essentially the bread and butter of SEO. There's not much to say here other than once you know what your target demographic is searching for, you need to create content that appeals to them. Remember, Google's search's only job is to match user questions with answers, not to give you free traffic. And along those lines, I feel it's important to note that also evergreen content can pay dividends over time. You create a piece of content once and it continues to bring in traffic over and over and over again. Number 4 is something that is often overlooked. I honestly don't even see it in guides these days. So I am wondering if it's too basic to even mention, but I feel the need to bring it up is to get crawled. Set up a Google Search Console account and make sure each page is manually indexed. Nothing really else to say other than make sure it gets done. Link building. This is something that's been controversial over the years. Do you pay for links? Do you not pay for links? How do you get links naturally, et cetera, et cetera? It's become easier and easier as time goes on, in my opinion. Here are a few tips that we use, so to speak. You can start posting the content you made to social media for others to find and repost. Obviously, this is going to take time. It's very organic, and it's a natural ebb of flow and time. Someone's going to have to find your content, so you're going to have to wait for it to be posted somewhere. Alternatively, you could try and speed things up by emailing webmasters and offering them a unique piece of content just for them to post on their website. I'm sure you've heard of this before. It's called guest blogging. And the last technique is to contact reporters. Just reach out to them, ask them what type of stories they're writing right now, and see if you can help them with any of the base information or underlying story. A great platform for that is called Harrow, Help a Reporter Out. It's been a fantastic tool. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what's coming in the future, what's coming next. These are kind of my opinions on what I think is coming up next. Voice search. It's coming, but it's not coming anytime soon. It is, however, important to note that Google has been architecting its search results pages to accommodate shorter answers, mainly in the form of featured snippets and answer boxes. It's done so with the help of AI and BERT algorithm, which was introduced in late 2019. And along those lines, artificial intelligence is being integrated into all facets of Google search, but they keep this very tight to the chest. So I really can't comment anymore other than the fact that I do feel like it's going to be used more and more as time goes on. Accessibility, the twofold, there's two things I want to talk about here. The first one is accessibility in terms of devices. So it's estimated that almost 73% of users will access the internet only through mobile devices by 2025. Personally, I've been in a mobile-first mindset since 2015, and I'm pleased that Google is reinforcing my postulations. I believe web designers will continue to incorporate features that do not depend on keyboard input, such as voice commands, virtual reality, augmented reality, etc., into the building of web experiences, if you will. Recently, my company has built an extremely powerful 3D modeling and rendering computer just so we can start experimenting with the possibilities of AR for marketing. We definitely don't want to be left behind if this is the next big thing. The next part of accessibility is accessibility for the impaired. This is something that, in the past has, in my opinion, at least, been very neglected, and I'm pleased that it's now being brought to the forefront more so than in the past. As you can see from the little animation I put on the screen here, there's various tools that you can install on your website, various pieces of code that will allow the users to interact with it in the manner in which they choose or which is more comfortable to them. The whole point is to make the web more accessible for everyone. The next thing I think is going to become more and more prominent as time goes on is YouTube, specifically the search engine component. YouTube has been basically helping their creators since the beginning with reach. Lately, they've added video chapter previews and auto-translate captions around mid-2021. Later on in December 2021, it launched a new feature that automatically links to places mentioned in videos, giving users even more context. I don't want people to forget that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. I'm not counting Google image search since it's integrated into the Google homepage itself, even though it is technically second in traffic and YouTube is third in traffic. And by extension, I think video is going to be big in the next, 48 months or so, the next couple of years. It's something that I've felt very strongly about since 2018, so much so that I started a media production company solely focused around video and podcasting called Purple Comma. It's just something I feel very strongly about, and it's not going away. Google indexes videos from millions of websites across the web to serve to its users, and these videos can appear in several different places on Google, including the main SERP page, video search results page, Google Images, and Google Discover as well. In general, my number one tip is to focus on the user experience above all else. Focusing on the user experience has never steered me wrong and is a great guiding light for all of your activities. Just ask yourself one question. Is this action going to benefit my end user or help Google connect them to my content? That's what I've been doing for over 10 years in one form or another, and it's never steered me wrong. Well, that's all we have for now. The whole point is to move into a Q&A discussion section. You can find me at oakseed.tech or purplecommapodcasting.com if you have any more questions. Thank you for your time.
It would help if I turned my video back on. All right, I'm going to give everybody just a few moments. If you're here in AirMeet for the live conversation, please take a look at the Q&A section and add any questions that you have there and vote up your favorite questions. If you are watching out on our various live feeds going out, please tweet at SEO Meetup any questions that you have, and we will work on bringing those in as well. And let me get Drago back up on stage here. Give him a moment to turn on his camera and mic so that we're both up here. And it looks like we've got a few questions starting to come in.
Is my video coming in? There it goes. All right.
There we are. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to start out with one that I just had fun with while the other questions are starting to come in. Here it is. All right. If AI is used by Google and AI is used to write content, are the SERPs helping humans or robots?
So if we're using your exact situation here in platform, technically the SERPs are helping robots since they're being written by robots for robots.
Yeah,
right?
I thought that was an interesting little thing. I apologize. My undergraduate degree is in philosophy, and I go down rabbit holes like this pretty quickly. So it just
this is more philosophical than anything.
It seemed interesting to me that all these content writing systems are using AI to analyze the search results and craft the perfect content based on what they see in the search engine results page. And then at the same time, Google is using AI to understand what is the best result.
It is.
So,
but one point we should make while we are talking about AI and whatnot, while it's kind of, at least in my opinion, it's in its very infancy in terms of writing content, I think it's absolutely amazing right now for writing title lines, title tags, example, for like websites, for blogs, for bits of advertising pieces. I think it's great for one-line type stuff, but I don't think AI is quite at the point of writing whole articles.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did a little test middle of last year, used a dozen or so different AI writing tools to see what they could actually do. For weather and news reports, I know that they've been using AI for that for years now. Basic formulaic content. Team A scored so many points against Team B, blah, blah, blah. The weather will be such and such a temperature, such and such rain or no. But for anything that's more creative, a lot of times the AI goes way off the wall. And if you try to write anything of any length, you have to have an editor that knows enough to know when the AI just made something up that's completely false. I found it to be a lot better for like brainstorming. Rather than sitting there with writer's block, you can click a button and have 10 ideas, and then a human can run with those ideas.
Yeah, completely agree. Took the words right out of my mouth.
All right, so we'll mark that one as answered, and that one did its job because we now have a nice little list of questions. I'm going to sort them by the number of upvotes, and we're going to get started charging through them. So good, somebody else voted another one up. There was going to be another one from me, so I'm glad that we got a different one. I don't want to be hogging the questions. All right, for a new website, what are the SEO areas you should be focused on in the first 3 months in 2022? This is from Vanessa.
So this is how I would approach a brand new website I was making right now. I would spend the first, assuming you spent the requisite time making sure, the website's worth being made, you're in the right business model, so to speak. Assuming all that's been done, I would spend the first month, maybe even maybe 3 weeks of that first month, just making sure the website, like a few of the things I was mentioning in the middle slides, that it's completely optimized so Google can read it upside down, backwards, forwards, any which way. And then I would honestly, in my personal opinion, I would spend the next 2 months writing content that you feel your target demographic needs to know about. If you don't know what they're wanting to know, I would recommend checking out a website called Quora.com, Quora. There's a lot of questions posted there on all the time from various different industries, and that's a great place that I've sent clients to that basically just want to make quick various pieces of content, whether it be a blog or a quick YouTube video. Chances are someone has asked a question about something in your industry, and you can find it on Quora and make a quick piece of content out of it. But to answer your question, spend the first month or so, maybe 3 weeks of that month, making sure the website's really good to go in terms of optimization, up, down, backwards, and forwards. And I would personally spend the rest of my time writing content or creating graphics for that content.
All right. And I just want to clarify, because I'm teaching some courses with some people that are extreme novices. When you say up, down, backwards, and forwards, you don't actually mean that the search engine is reading it backwards. What kind of tool are you using to measure how good you've done, or what kind of tool would a rookie, somebody that's completely new to this, be able to use to quantify if they have achieved that goal of making it really easy for the search engine to read it and index it?
That is a great question, actually. So I like to always, especially since you said someone new getting started, I like to recommend free tools first. So the first couple things that you can mark your progress on, optimization, the Google PageSpeed Insights website itself. It'll scan your website. It'll tell you, some of those factors we actually talked about in terms of cumulative layout shift, last contentful paint. It'll tell you those things. Also, along the same lines, another website called GT Metrics is very helpful because it gives you additional information about your website in the form of what's called a waterfall. Don't ask me why it's called that. That's just the way it is. And essentially, it gives you a visual representation of how your resources are loading and how long it takes for them to load up. Where was I going with the third resource? Google Image. Search Console. If you hook up Google Search Console to this newly created website, you can manually put in your sitemap, and that way you guarantee that Google is reading your sitemap directly from you. So those are the three tools I would recommend: Google Search Console, gtmetrics.com, and the native Google PageSpeed Insights website.
All right. Let's see what we've got up next here. I might have stolen one of the topics. This is a tool. Oh, good. Keyword research. What is the best tool to use for keyword research and competitor benchmarking in 2022? Also from Vanessa. Vanessa's questions are popular so far.
I mean, they're good questions. Why not? So best tool for keyword research and competitor benchmarking. I'm trying to think of multiple ones, but I really can't. The only one that I really can recommend right now, without a shadow of a doubt, is a website called Ahrefs, Ahrefs. It's something that I've been using for years. It is a paid tool, unfortunately, but the reason why it is a paid tool is it does come with a plethora of information for both keyword research and competitor gap analysis, which does save agencies a ton of time. That's really the only one I can recommend. What about you, Frank?
Well, related to the price of tools, something that I've frequently told folks is that if the tool seems expensive, it's likely that you don't have the problem that it solves.
Ooh, I like that.
That's not necessarily a value judgment. It doesn't mean that you should have the problem that it solves. It's just that you're lucky enough you don't have that problem. Maybe a different tool is right for you.
That's actually a really good place to stop and kind of pause real quick, because that's I'm sure, Frank, you can speak from the same avenue as I have as getting started as a small business person X years ago. When we were getting started, I'll speak for myself. When I was getting started, I really had no need for Ahrefs in the line of what you were just saying. I was just getting started. I had a very limited client load. I was able to do a lot of the research I needed to do manually, and it wasn't a big deal. Fast forward a decade, there's more clients, there's more things to do. So paying for a subscription that shaves time off the bottom is kind of a no-brainer. So you bring up a very good point.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the next lesson that I always talk to clients about, and that is that everything costs either time or money. Which one is more valuable to you depends on where you are in your business. Different stages, like you mentioned. At the beginning, you have plenty of time, you don't have a lot of money, you do things manually. as you become an established business, you don't have very much time, you've got some money coming in, you buy the tools. So you might want to do things manually if you're working with a really tight budget, or you might want to invest some funds in the tools. All right, and let me see what we have next in the questions here. Well, I'll throw this one up since it did get 2 upvotes, but it is mine. Should you pay for links with money or time? I think that's a pretty good segue into that one.
Yeah, based on what we're talking about, and in general, it's this one's kind of a philosophical question, but not really, in the sense of Google has made it very, very clear that you should not pay for links with money. They've made that very, very clear. But in a weird roundabout way, I see what you're getting at by asking this. We are absolutely paying for links with our time by creating free content that we are just giving away to people. So I guess from an agency standpoint, the only legal way I see of doing it is paying for with time.
All right, and let me get back over to my questions here. While I'm navigating back over to the questions, I did get a reminder that Ahrefs has actually launched a new product that was not available when Drago, you and I got started. There is a free version of Ahrefs that is under the name Webmaster Tools that gives you a lot of information for getting started. All right, next up, there we are. We've got a question coming in from Whitney. I understand that Google is not going to negatively rank duplicate content. How likely is it to give it an advantage?
So I'm not quite understanding the question, because if it's not going to rank it negatively per se, it's not going to give it an advantage. But I think I know what you're getting at. So the way that, let's say this is an e-commerce website and you're using the same description in terms of duplicate content that everyone else is. The way you would get yours to rank higher than someone else's, I guess is what you're getting at, is you would have to have some sort of a differentiating factor that makes your website a little bit more informative. So in addition to this description of, let's say, a sweatshirt, you're also going to add something of maybe a personal experience, like on fall, winter nights when it gets cold, I like to grab this hoodie and start up a campfire and roast some marshmallows. It keeps me comfortable. So the way you kind of delineate yourself from the same piece of content is I guess to offer a little bit more. And me saying that out loud, it's really not saying much, because that's all Google is doing anyway. They're looking through all this content and they're trying to match it up with the best answer for a person's given query. So if you're kind of doing the right things anyway, your duplicate content in theory should be better than someone else's if you're doing everything else right. But there's no real way to have an advantage in this sense, since it's a piece of content that's, again, ubiquitously copy pasted across a bunch of websites.
Another place you mentioned, the e-commerce, another place where I've run into this duplicate content quite a lot is real estate agents and a few other specialties like that. And there are service providers that will sell content to this class of business. Bail bonds or something like that, where you have a service provider in every geographic region across the country, and so they can write one blog post and then sell it to like every real estate agent across the United States. That's their business model, and trying to explain to those real estate agents that having that exact same content on all of the websites doesn't help any of them rank for any keywords that are of any value to their business.
Yeah, that brings up another good point as well.
Yeah, so I think ultimately there's nothing in duplicate content that's going to really give an advantage to anyone. At the furthest stretch of the imagination, the only advantage that I can think of is that your blog does have additional content without you having had to do anything. But there's already so much content on the internet. Nobody's really looking for another blog post with 10 articles to read versus 5. Focusing on actually serving the customer or serving the audience is where it's at. And nobody really wants another blog post, so it needs to justify even existing.
And Frank, just out of curiosity, could you clarify what you just said? Do you mean in the sense of like the blog post? I'm sorry, the duplicate content, you're adding it to the blog post to make it longer to meet Google's minimum requirements, or did you mean something else?
I mean, if somebody comes to a website and they see that, oh, there's only 3 blog posts on this website, versus they come to that same website and they see, oh, there's 100 blog posts on this website, they might feel like there's more content there.
Gotcha.
But realistically, nobody's going to read your 100 blog posts.
Yeah, gotcha.
The only way that they're going to find it is that they have a problem that they're searching on Google to be able to locate and read your content then. Very rarely does anybody actually go through and read every post of a blog or any website for that matter. Does that make sense?
Yep. Perfect.
There's a glut of content. It's just hard to get somebody's attention for 5 minutes, let alone 5 hours.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up, we've got a question from Janice. Any tips for people getting started with videos on YouTube?
Yeah, I have a great, over-encompassing tip and then a few more little ones, but it sounds counterintuitive, but when you're, making videos on YouTube, make sure your audio is impeccable. People will watch a grainy 240p video all day, every day. But if your audio sounds remotely distorted, grainy, phased out, anything, echoey, like you're in a different room, people will click off in an instant. So the number one tip I can give, even if you have a very limited budget, is to either find yourself in an environment that's kind of soundproofed, so there's not a lot of sound echoing, or if you can spare $50 to $75, buy a standalone microphone to record your videos with, whether you're doing live talking head or voiceovers like I was doing earlier. So the biggest thing I could say is make sure the audio is crystal clear when it comes to YouTube videos, or any videos for that matter. When it comes to the topic of the actual video quality, if I'm being perfectly honest, most small business owners can get away with using the probably pretty high quality phone that you have camera you have sitting in your pocket. For most things, talking head videos, you need someone to maybe hold it if you don't have a tripod. But the video quality you get out of a smartphone is pretty darn good, especially if you spend a couple bucks and attach a microphone to it.
Yeah, especially if they're using the phone. There are some very affordable lavalier mics, so that way you could put the phone onto a tripod and have the mic clipped onto your shirt and still have some distance between you and the camera.
One thing I also want to add, a tip for kind of framing your videos. So the way you kind of see Frank and I right now, at least I'm assuming you see Frank and I, both him and I are in the middle of the video, and that's not really what you want to do. You want to chop your kind of screen up into thirds and have your actually, Frank, can they see me right now?
Yeah. Let me actually hide the question.
Oh, you're good.
And
okay,
you'll take up more space on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So, in the sense that you see 100% of my screen here, this is what I'm assuming everyone else can see is 100%. You're going to want to split your screen up into thirds and have someone in these two planes in terms of your subject. You don't really want folks in the middle here when you're doing an extended video. You want folks in one of these two planes where my hands are going up and down. Basically, split the screen up into thirds.
So as another example related to that, if you take a look at the larger video feed that we're sending out, the whole frame with the background behind us, with us being centered, this platform roughly has us in those 1/3 positions.
Yeah. Wait, on this screen, actually, yeah. Neither of us are in the middle.
Yeah. All right. So next question. This one's got a little bit to it, so give me a minute. Probably going to stumble over it.
Yeah.
Is keyword percentage distribution in content still important in building a content roadmap strategy? A couple of parts. If yes, Since we avoid keyword stuffing, what is the best percentage of main keyword, secondary, and/or LSI going into 2022?
So is keyword percent distribution in content still an important in building? So unless I'm misunderstanding this question, this answer is a resounding no. The percentage of keyword distribution hasn't mattered in years, in my opinion. All that's important is that you do your research, you know what your keywords are. Obviously, you're going to want to put them into your blog or your piece of content, but you're going to want to weave it in as naturally as possible. You're also the only, I guess, trick in this avenue. You're wondering if there's anything you can do to kind of, make your content stand out. The only trick I could give, and again, it isn't really a trick, is to use alternate phrasings of things you're trying to say. So, and that's just probably a secondary keyword, if you will, or it could be something more long tail, but there's not really keyword distribution anymore. The only thing I would say on that front is absolutely don't do any sort of keyword stuffing like you mentioned. You want to absolutely avoid it. But no, in my opinion, there hasn't been a percentage in years. What about you, Frank?
The only reason that I would use any kind of a keyword percentage is to be able to measure if this is spammy content.
Yeah, we're going
So
too far.
yeah, so there would be an upper threshold where this definitely looks like it's spammy. So it's only for a negative measurement. And then as far as LSI is concerned, the only thing that I've used that for anytime recently is in order to sort of research a topic without having to do the research.
Yeah.
I can see if a word appears on 10 out of 10 top results pages, then I'm going to add that to the list of things that should be mentioned at some point by a writer writing about that subject. So I don't need to do anything about the subject. The writer receiving the assignment at the beginning doesn't need to know anything about the assignment, and we already have a bullet list of we need to touch on each of these topics. But just like you were saying, the content should be written for the user, not for the machine. All right. Mark that one as answered. And next up, we have a question from Camilla. What is the average expected time for a redesigned website to start ranking on search? For example, all new keywords, images, photos, content, etc.
For a redesigned website. So that's important. So the website has existed for some period of time. This question was a lot easier for me to answer probably a year or two ago. It's much harder for me to answer now. And let me kind of break it down in pieces. So Google in their official documentation says it takes about 10 weeks to, index a website and get it going into its search results, so to speak. So 10 weeks, right? That's, 3 months or so. In the past, this is kind of the metric that I've used to set expectations with my clients. I'm like, look, from the beast himself, Google has said it takes 10 weeks for us to get stuff rolling. With that said, when it comes to certain low competition keywords, we've actually gotten them to rank in a matter of days/weeks. So it's really hard to answer that. It really, I guess the biggest overarching part is how competitive are these keywords you're going after. If they're more competitive, then it very well might take longer than 10 weeks. But the only reason I bring that up is because that's the metric that I thought was the end all be all for many years. But then, over time, we just, obviously our clients ask us to target various things in their strategies. And so we target some of these lower hanging fruit, if you will, and we're able to get them to rank with, like I said, within days or weeks. So there's not a really, well, actually, no. If you're saying an average expected time, I'm going to expect it to rank within 10 weeks. Let's say it like that.
The thing that concerns me a little bit is that she did say for a redesigned website to start ranking. So it should have ranked prior to the redesign, and it should continue to rank after the redesign. However, if the redesign is done incorrectly, sometimes you can have a robots.txt file telling the search engine to no index the site, and then it wouldn't be ranking at all. So if that's your problem, check your robots.txt file. If that's not your problem, if you're just trying to climb through the ranks for the new keywords that you're targeting, everything that Drago said.
That is a good point, and that makes me wonder if we should have a separate conversation about that type of stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have at the tables there, if that's the challenge that Camilla's wrestling with. We'll have at the networking where we can get into the weeds on some of those more specific details there as to what that problem might be and try to find a solution.
Perfect.
And let's see. I'm going to pull this one. We've got 3 left on stage. So last few minutes here with questions. If anybody has any final ones or wants to vote these up, go ahead and put those in now or tweet at SEO Meetup, and I'll check Twitter in just a moment. Vanessa's question is, how do you start with voice search?
So Google hasn't given us very much guidance on this, at least that I've been able to find in terms of definitive, but something I can postulate is based on something I said earlier, that Google is moving their architecture already, that we can see towards quick short answers in the form of rich snippets and whatnot. So I would recommend setting up your website in such that fashion. So there's short, quick answers to, long or, medium form questions, but also, making sure everything's coded properly so it has the ability to show up there. I guess that's how I would get started with voice search right now.
I would share one example of something another company did. I wish it was my idea because it was pure genius. They gave away a Alexa. This was a few years ago. I think they also had a Google Home, so you could take your pick. And they showed up at a conference with a booth giving this away. And the entry, the only thing that you had to do on the form is tell them a question about SEO that you would ask the device.
Oh,
and so they filled a fishbowl full of questions that people would be asking their voice devices, and they went and created all that content. So it's too late. They already ranked for all of it.
That is genius.
But I just loved that because they're giving away a device that everybody wants. They're at a conference with a bunch of people that are relatively new. They were at a entry-level kind of marketing conference, a bunch of people that are novices, and just crowdsourcing all of the questions and then go answer all the questions.
I agree with you there. That is pretty genius.
Yeah. So if that works for your industry, go do it. All right, Mark, that one is answered. And I don't want to end with mine, so I'm going to bring mine up and then we'll have one more after mine. Recently, TikTok became more popular than Google. How would you get started with TikTok SEO?
So there's this one's more open-ended. I'm going to answer it more so from a marketing perspective rather than just an SEO aspect, because there's very limited things we can do in terms of SEO specifically. Realistically, using right now the trending hashtags is probably the only thing you can do. The rest of the stuff is kind of just marketing and attention based. So just like, back in the day when Twitter got started, like what are the optimal posting times? So if you don't have a existing following that you're using TikTok for, and you're just trying to get viral, just trying to have fun, Thursdays or Fridays at 1 p.m. is a good time to post your stuff. However, if you have a existing audience, you can just pre-construct the optimal time. And what I mean by that is, and this is also going to lead into my example of using TikTok to complement existing activities, not just make new stuff up. But for example, I work with a couple of video game YouTubers, and basically one day we just started experimenting with using TikTok and basically just making an announcement that they're going live on their stream in 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. Why did we do this? Because no one subscribes on Twitch or Stream. Like, no one does that. Everyone subscribes to the person's social profiles, like the Instagrams, the Twitters, the TikToks of the world. So since TikTok is now gaining more favor and more momentum over the other, Facebooks and Instagrams of the world, that's where all the youngsters and all the people that are consuming the video game content are going. So they're just using it to extend their existing activities. Another tip is to kind of prioritize shorter videos, keep them to 30 seconds or less. So usually it's not, how do I say, it's usually not conducive to educational videos. It's more so along the lines of Vines, for those of you remember those. But I don't want to say it can't be done, because there's a great user on there by the name of @DermDoctor, who I actually found through YouTube and then noticed he was doing stuff on TikTok. But my point is, he does fantastic educational stuff, and he keeps it pretty, short, for lack of a better term. And it's just the way you kind of approach the topic. In the same vein of train of thought, having added visuals on the screens helps out with going viral, so to speak, just because people's attention spans are short. So having some moving action of some sort, a green check mark, or a red cross to say no or something. It can mean good or bad. It could know yes or no. Just having some moving visuals. So those are probably the three big tips. Use trending hashtags, and those can be discovered the same way you would for Instagram or anything else. If you don't have your own audience and you're trying to go viral, Thursday or Friday around 1 p.m. is a good time. If you do have your own audience, just use TikTok to extend your existing activities, and kind of use the visuals on screen to keep people's attention and keep the videos about 30 seconds or less. I know that was a lot right there.
That was a lot of good ideas. My only suggestion is maybe to start using TikTok, because I'm not on TikTok. I've got my hands full with everything else and have not gotten into that platform. So I'm missing out entirely. But the place to start is figure out what's working. All right, last one. Whoops. Oh, no. Where did it go?
And you lost it.
And I lost it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good one too, so I got to go find it. There it is. There we go. Do you know of a good website that can check your website's accessibility?
Oh, this is a great question. I don't know it off the top of my head, but let me double check to see if it's in my bookmarks. That's a great question. Frank, is there anything you can say on that topic while I'm looking through my bookmarks?
Well, while you're looking through the bookmarks, do you know off the top of your head the plugin that you were using on your site?
Yes and no. It's not available currently. I'm working on developing it with a nonprofit type situation. So once they're ready to release it, I can spill the beans, but I can't really say too much right now.
Okay. So I know nothing about that plugin, but I have looked at some other accessibility plugins in the past. And I'm far from an expert in accessibility issues. I am at the mercy of not requiring screen readers and such, and so all I know is what I've been able to read. One of the things that I learned is I used to do the hashtag SEO meetup with a lowercase m, because for my mind, I could see SEO all capitalized and then meetup all lowercase and recognize that as being two separate words pretty easily in the hashtag. Unfortunately, I learned that a screen reader will try to read that as a word that starts with a capital letter O and continues with the letters MEETUP. So Almedup, I guess, is how it pronounced it. I don't know how it would try to pronounce that. So I changed, and you can go back and look at, like on Twitter, just scroll through the feed there and see when I use the capital M and when I use the lowercase m. And when I started using the capital M was when I learned that that was messing up screen readers. I use that as an example because there are so many different screen readers that a lot of the accessibility plugins actually end up doing a lot of harm, because they are only halfway solving the problem, and in doing so they're creating a whole bunch of different elements that screen readers are trying to read, and it makes it a terrible experience on websites. So for that reason, I have avoided most of those plugins, but if you're working on the development with them, hopefully that's ironing out a lot of those issues. And I know that there are a handful of plugins that actually do help in that space.
Yeah, and that's literally what we're working through right now. We're trying to figure out every possible way something can go wrong with like anything, and then we'll be ready to kind of release it to the world. And yeah, I don't know if you noticed, Frank, but I went ahead and put the URL into the chat window there, which I'm hoping everyone can see. So last time I checked, this was, don't quote me on this because things like this change in the drop of a dime, but this was approved by an agency that specifically deals with impaired individuals' web accessibility initiatives. So at one point, I know this Wave web accessibility tool was approved. I don't know right this second. And the only reason I say that is because I've moved away from stopping using these tools because a lot of they all have one really good thing going for them, but not all of them have a good big picture in terms of telling you what's wrong with your website and also how to fix it. And for that reason, I've kind of transitioned to helping this organization with building a tool that can just go on websites that helps you not only evaluate them, but also just, handle the execution of the various changes, if you will.
And for anybody that is watching or listening, it is the Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. And it has a long-ish URL, so I'm going to suggest that you probably just go to Google and type in Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, and it's going to be at the top of the list there.
Perfect.
All right, so thank you very much for the presentation and for going through the Q&A with us. I am going to wrap everything up, and we're going to head over to the networking around the tables section. So thank you very much.
Perfecto. I'm just going to go grab a drink real quick.
All right. We will meet you in the networking area.